Welcome to the British Museum's Knowledge Share Spring Event Series 2021. These events seek to build on some of the conversations that were held at our National Programmes Conference in 2019, which explored equality and diversity in UK museum practice. We're delighted to host so many contributors from across the UK's cultural heritage sector, including several returning speakers from our 2019 conference. I'm grateful to the Vivmar Foundation for the long-term and valuable support of the Knowledge Share programme, which has made these events possible. And I thank you all for joining us as we explore the ways in which museums and heritage organisations have adapted to the profound changes of 2020 and look ahead to the changes yet to come.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. It's brilliant to have so many of you here. I'm just going to run through some housekeeping before we can get started. So this session is being recorded and it will be uploaded to the BM Events YouTube channel afterwards, so you can catch up on anything. But for now, we're filming live and we'd love for you guys to get involved. So the chat function is open. Please do get the conversation going. We want to create a safe environment for discussion and sharing ideas. So please follow the museum's code of conduct, which is protect privacy, please don't share anyone's personal information, stay on topic, and please be respectful. So I'm sure you're looking forward to getting started. So I'm going to hand over to Afzal, who will introduce our brilliant speakers to the stage.
Welcome to the second event of the Knowledge Share Spring Event Series. Please do get comfortable as we're in for a treat. Today, we're delighted to be joined by Lynsey Gillespie and Laura Aguiar, who will be leading the session. Both Lynsey and Laura work for the Public Records Office of Northern Ireland, or PRONI. Lynsey Gillespie is an archivist at PRONI and the curator for the Making the Future project. Laura Aguiar is a community engagement officer and creative producer at PRONI for Making the Future project. She is also a multimedia storyteller and founder and co-director of the Rathmullen Film Festival. Laura and Lynsey are looking forward to answering your questions at the end, so please do send them in using the Q&A function. I'll come back on screen at the end of the presentation to put your questions to them. A warm welcome to both Lynsey and Laura. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us today. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks everyone for joining us today. So my name is Lynsey and I'm here with my colleague Laura. And we both work for the Public Record Office of Northern Ireland, otherwise known as PRONI. And I'll just take you through it quickly, just for anybody who doesn't know exactly what PRONI is. We are the official archive for Northern Ireland. You can see on the screen there, our building is based in the Titanic Quarter area of Belfast. And we were created just short of 100 years ago by the Public Records Act of 1923, which built in archiving provision for the new state of Northern Ireland. As I said, we are the official archive for Northern Ireland. And that means that we have a statutory obligation to archive, preserve and make available the records of the devolved administration in Northern Ireland. But that basically just means the Northern Ireland Civil Service. And that's a huge part of the work that we do. But we are also uniquely a privately deposited archive as well. So under our legislation, anyone can deposit records to PRONI about anything or anyone that relates to the heritage or the history of Northern Ireland. PRONI is currently holding about 3.5 million records in its care, and more than a third of them have come from private depositors. So there's a great wealth and variety in our records. And we've got everything from huge landed estate records to local businesses, both big and small, clubs and societies, right down to notable individuals. And Laura and I are here today to talk about work that we have done through the Making the Future project. For the last couple of years, PRONI has been partnered on the Making the Future project. And the Making the Future project is a cross-border cultural programme, and it's a collection, a consortium of institutions that are working on it together. So there's us as the official archive for Northern Ireland. National Museums Northern Ireland is the biggest sort of collection of museums in Northern Ireland. The Linnenhall Library is the oldest library in Belfast, and we're all led by a place called the Nerve Centre, which is a creative learning centre. It has offices in Derry in the northwest of Northern Ireland and in Belfast as well. We are funded under the European Union's Peace 4 programme. For anyone that doesn't know, there's been lots of iterations of peace funding for the last 20 years in Northern Ireland. A lot of the funding is very much focused on cross-community engagement and healing and cohesion and things like that. And our programme is quite focused on personal well-being. understanding the past to see how it got us to where we are so that we know where we want to go for the future. And as the institutions that are holding the building blocks that tell us about our past, we're in a great position to be able to do that collectively as a group and be able to bring all of our collections to life through the leadership of the Nerve Centre. So the Making the Future project has lots of different themes going on. There's 9 different themes of work and each institution is responsible for different ones. PRONI is responsible for 3 of them, the Making the Future Oral Archive, which is an ongoing thing that we're collecting from people who work with us. We ask people to give us a little oral testimony at the end about how they felt about working with us on the programme and what it meant to them. But the other 2 that PRONI are responsible for is Women in the Archives and 100 Shared Stories. We spent the first couple of years very much focused on Women in the Archives, and we are now working on 100 Shared Stories, but both Laura and I will tell you a little bit more about that as we go through. So the first 2 years of the project were very much focused on women in the archives for us, and we did lots of different things. We had exhibitions in both PRONI and the Lynn Hall Library in Belfast as we were partnered with them. We had an events programme which included lots of different things, film screenings, talks and events, tours. But the heart of everything that we do for the Making the Future project is all about community engagement. And for us in PRONI, it's about taking PRONI out of the building and out of Belfast and right into communities across Northern Ireland and the border counties to get more people involved with what we have and to encourage more people to deposit to us as well. So a lot of our work pre-COVID was very much on the road and in person. We worked with hundreds of participants across a lot of different programs, and you can see some examples here on the screen. We created trail maps of a cemetery in Belfast. We've done filmmaking and virtual reality. We've buried time capsules. We've been all over Northern Ireland. Due to our funders, we had a really healthy budget for being able to get us out to them and then bring them all to PRONI, no matter where they were based in Northern Ireland. We found our participants through lots of different ways. Sometimes we would design a programme ourselves and put it out as an open call for people to join us. Other times we would find groups to work with and discuss with them what they wanted to do and build a programme around that. As I said, we have really healthy funding from the European Union, which is great, but they also set us quite high targets at the same time. We had targets for the amount of people that we were supposed to work with, but also for how long we were supposed to work with them for. So pre-COVID, we had to work with everybody for a minimum of 26 hours. And we did that in lots of different ways. Sometimes we'd only meet groups once or twice a week, and we could work with them for 7 to 10 weeks. 1 day a week, 1 evening a week, exploring lots of different themes. Other times, particularly if we were looking at working with young people or children, we would wait for the Easter holidays or their summer holidays and work with them every day for a week. So just a full week, and we call that a hothouse programme. So we did it in lots of different ways, and we were constantly on the road, constantly in the room with people, bringing the archives to life in lots of new and exciting ways. And it was all going great guns. And then, as we all know, March 2020 hit and absolutely everything changed. PRONI itself closed to the public on the 18th of March, and then it closed to staff as well on the 23rd of March. At that time, Laura and I had a lot of plans in place for what we wanted to do with people. We had a hothouse plan for the Easter holidays in 2020, but it was all to do with filmmaking and the UTV archive, and we did actually eventually manage to do that, and Laura will tell you a bit about that later on. But all of the plans that we had in place were very much built around our traditional face-to-face communication, and all of them just had to drop once we were told that we were no longer allowed to gather in groups together anymore. So we were all sitting at home with our laptops, sort of thinking about, well, like, what now? What do we do? And we got word from our project management team and from the funders quite quickly that they wanted us to carry on. And we wanted to carry on too. I mean, largely for personal reasons, to give us something to do, something to focus on. But we also knew that we had built such great momentum through the first 2 years of the project that we really didn't want it to drop, and we didn't want to let it linger for too long. So we set about trying to think, how could we move our engagement online, and what would we do? So working in an archive, both Laura and I knew that here we were living through one of these extraordinary, what would later be historically significant events in life. These are the kinds of things we've been talking to our participants about, that we've been getting them to bring to life already. What was it like to live through the suffrage movement, the First World War, the Second World War, the Troubles, all of these things that we study and talk about now. And we knew we were all just stepping into one, and we were about to be living through one. So we wanted to build a community engagement program that would do two things: keep people in touch, help us to still be able to reach out, to engage with people, to keep people occupied, but also find a way that we would be able to document this time, and we would be able to document the time from the perspective of ordinary people who were trying to live their lives through this time. We know in PRONI, as the official archive, that we will in 20 years' time get all of the records from the government departments who were working on reactions to the coronavirus. We'll get them from health, we'll get them from finance, we'll get all of that kind of stuff. But we knew that what people in the future are really going to want to know is, what was it really like to live through that and experience it? So that's what we set about to do. And out of that was born Ordinary People, Extraordinary Times, which was our first jump into online engagement. And we wanted to do, as I say, a number of things. We knew that communication was key, but we also knew that not everybody had the same skills for online communication. So we wanted to do a bit of a mashup between sort of like digital and analog communication, and that we wanted to encourage everybody to have things to talk about and also to write down their experiences and hopefully leave them behind for future generations. It ended up being a 3-month program because we ran it 3 times over. It ended up being really popular. We were really surprised with how many people signed up to work with us. So we ran it over 3 different groups over 3 months. Our numbers were reduced for engagement time down to 10 hours, which was really, really helpful because there's only so long that everybody can sit online and listen for or engage for when you're online. And over 800 different objects were shared by our participants. So some of them were things that they already had in their homes that were significant to them. Other things were things they created along the way with us. And all of it is built into an online exhibition, which I am going to show you. But I'll tell you a little bit more about exactly how we did it. Trying to do the mashup of both kind of, digital engagement and traditional engagement. So we were using Zoom, obviously, to engage with people, and we were meeting with them twice a week to have discussions and get to know one another and talk about the tasks that we'd maybe set them through the week. We also use an online message board called Slack. Laura will probably explain that in a little bit more detail later on, but it was a way for people to be able to share photographs of what they were doing with each other outside of the time that we were on the Zoom calls, and it just meant that the engagement could be wider than just on Zoom. But we also sent out everybody paper packs as well with lots of different things in them. You might be able to see on the screen there's a thing called the Life Story playlist. So we sent that out to people, and we said, if you're just one person working with us and filling this in, you could think of 6 songs in your life that mean something to you, write them down, tell us why, and then come on Zoom and explain it to everybody. If it was a whole family taking part in the program with us, then maybe one person could pick, each person from the family could pick a song and put it in. We sent them out notebooks, which we said could either turn into diaries or scrapbooks, to help people kind of document the time that we were all living through. We sent out headed paper envelopes and stamps and encouraged people to communicate with family members who maybe couldn't use Zoom or WhatsApp or FaceTime in the same way that other people can. So we were kind of thinking about elderly relatives. We wanted people to get on board. Maybe one person signed up, but they could have represented a whole family of people, or them and their neighbours or their friends. So we decided we wanted people to do that traditional kind of communication as well and write each other letters, because letters will stick around longer than your Zoom call will. I mean, once your Zoom call is over, it's over. Whereas if you write it down in a letter and send it to someone, they're far more likely to hang on to it for a long period of time. And also that they can read it and read it and read it again, particularly if it's someone that's living alone through the lockdown, that letters could be really, really meaningful. So we sent those out as well. And we also sent out some family tree charts, because working in PRONI, our biggest business is obviously normally people researching their family history. And we wanted to reach out and show people what they could still do from their homes to find out about their family history. We wanted to encourage people to talk amongst their families about it. So we sent that out as well. So everybody that took part got a paper pack in the post, and then also did engage with us online every week throughout the programme. So hopefully this is going to work. The next thing, I apologise, is a very crude screen recording off my mobile phone of the online exhibition, but you can go on and look at it, and everything that was shared with us is in there. One of the first things we did was a thing called Home Treasures, and you can see some of them here. And we just wanted people to go look in their attics, look around their houses, seeing as they were in them so much, and look at the things that maybe they've held on to themselves and think about why is it important? Why have they never thrown it out? Things that get passed down through generations of families and heirlooms, and think about, like, why do we hang on to some things and throw other things away? As I say, we also sent out letters and scrapbooks and diaries and encouraged people to fill them in. Lots of people did write out to their elderly relatives, to grandparents and things like that. But we had some people who wrote letters to themselves in the future. We had a lady who wrote to her unborn grandchild who was going to be born through the pandemic. And those were all sitting there for them to look back on and read. We got some people sent their letters in, some people sent their diaries and their scrapbooks in to be permanently preserved in PRONI as well, which was great. You can also see on the screen there, then we did the family stories. So we encourage people to have a chat about their family history. We always say in PRONI, if you're starting with your family history, ask your relatives first. So we thought, get on the phone, have a chat, think about it, see how much of this family tree chart you can fill in from doing stuff online and talking to your own family members. And then, of course, finally, we did lockdown stories. So we wanted everybody to document exactly what life was like before we all forget. So there's somebody clapping for the NHS, which is something we only did for a while. And do all of us even remember doing that now? Maybe picking up new skills, all of the different things that became important or hard to get during the initial lockdown. Doing your Joe Wicks workout or some kind of physical challenge from home, and people who kept sort of digital online diaries and then shared them with us. We wanted just to be able to help everybody share their experience at the time, keep in touch and leave things behind to document the time. So that was what we did with Ordinary People, Extraordinary Times. And then off the back of that, for PRONI in general, once Laura and I had started this program, we could see that lots of people really were keen to share their experience of the time and to get involved. And off the back of that then was born a program in PRONI called Stay Home Memories. So this was a project that we did. And again, on this screen recording, this is the PRONI website. It's still live. So if you go to it now, you can find the Stay Home Memories part of our website. And we did lots of different things on this off the back of what we had done with our Making the Future project. So we asked people to fill in a lockdown census, not knowing that we would all be filling in a census still in lockdown a year later, but we developed this census form to get people to fill it in. So there was all the basic information: who's in your house, how are they related to one another, what age are they, but we also asked questions like, did you lock down in your usual residence, or did you move to care for someone else or be with your relatives? What was your occupation, and then what was your work status through the lockdown? Were you working from home? Were you furloughed? And then we also asked everybody to describe the lockdown in one word. And that was probably the most interesting thing to come off the back of that census, was all the different words that people used to describe the lockdown. We said it a lot at the time. We were all in the same storm, but not all in the same boat. Everybody experienced it differently. And even just in one word, you can see how differently everybody was experiencing it. We had over 60 different words come back in response to the pandemic, which was really, really amazing. As well as asking people to fill in the census for Stay Home Memories, we did ask people to deposit their photographs, their videos, their diaries, that reflected what life was like during the pandemic, and we got more than 100 responses to that as well. And then we also asked people to nominate websites to our web archiving project. So PRONI does web archiving across websites and social media sites, and as long as they're public and open, we ask people to nominate community-based websites to that, or social media sites. So I know that I started following a thing on Instagram called Who's Delivering Northern Ireland during the original lockdown, so you could find out who was delivering food and different things to different places. But that loads of things like that popped up in response to the pandemic, and we wanted to make sure that we were archiving that as well. So we got people to nominate those, and we're working our way through them at the moment. So initially for us in the Making the Future project and for PRONI in general, our initial jump into online engagement in the first 3 months was very much focused on the time that we were living in, and working out the kinks of exactly how we could do it. And then for PRONI, off the back of that, PRONI has built a really solid program of online events, workshops, reaching out to people through the pandemic to show people what you can still do. Aside from a couple of months over the summer, PRONI has been shut for almost a year. But there's still lots of ways people can get involved with us, and it was thinking outside the box to make sure that people knew that that could still happen, but mainly making sure that everybody knew that we really are living through an extraordinary time, and the more that we can document it and share with each other, the better and the easier we're making it for historians and researchers of the future. But that was our initial reaction, was very much about the pandemic and just communicating with people and making sure that we documented it. I'm going to pass over to Laura now, and she's going to be able to tell you a little bit more about how we sustained that over a year. We didn't imagine we would be doing it for as long as we have been doing it, how we sustained it and how we got back on to looking at our own things and meeting our own targets once the kind of dust had settled off the original lockdown. So I will pass over now to my colleague Laura.
Thank you, Lynsey. So as Lynsey said before, what we would like to do now is to show you how we followed that on, and we built online programs that weren't necessarily related to documenting the pandemic. Almost kind of going back to the original focus of Making the Future, which is to bring our collections to the public. But of course, our PRONI was very much, as Lynsey said, close to the public and also to the staff. We were only allowed back into the building in June on a very, very limited capacity. So even our access to the archives was very limited. So there was only so much that we could select and bring to the public. So what we decided to do early on then was to focus on documents and collections that were either already digitized or that wouldn't require a lot of trips to the stores and a lot of work. And as I said, there was a lot of limitations in terms of our accessibility to the archives. And as she said as well, in terms of the engagement and how we would recruit people before the pandemic, we would either work with people via open calls. So we had a program idea with advertising and people would come to us, or we would work with groups. So when we finished the Ordinary Extraordinary project, we had to think about as well which recruitment strategy we would use going forward. And what we decided then is the open calls are working so well. We're getting a very, very good geographic spread as well, which I'm going to show you very shortly. So we thought that let's stay with that for the time being and see how that goes in terms of the engagement. There was a lot of interest in online programs early on. Just to give you just a good illustration of the amazing thing about going virtual is the geographic spread. Pre-lockdown, as Lynsey said, thankfully we had money in the budget to travel to communities, and we tried to do that as much as possible. But of course that your time and availability is a little bit limited, so there is only so much that we can do in terms of reaching out to people. But going online, it really allowed us to spread. And the Ordinary Extraordinary project was great in showing us how brilliant it was to not only get to places that we would never get otherwise, but also to bring people together who were located so far from each other as well. So it was something that the open calls have allowed us to do during the Ordinary project, and it was something that we wanted to continue doing when the summer came. So during the lockdown, we delivered 6 programs. So Lynsey already told you about the first one, which was the Ordinary People Extraordinary Times. So for the rest of this presentation, I'm going to focus on 3 other projects. A YouTube filmmaking program we did for young people, another one called Textile Stories, and the second engagement program we did for a different strand called 100 Short Stories. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about those 3 projects. So let's start with the YouTube filmmaking one. As Lynsey said, before the lockdown, we had grand plans for Easter. We were going to bring young filmmakers into PRONI to engage with a collection that we were dying to get our hands on and to work with it, which is the UTV archives, which is, I think it's the largest audiovisual collection that PRONI hold. UTV was Ireland's first commercial broadcaster. So it is a very important collection. A section of the material has been digitized, so there was already a good amount of material there that we could work with, and we partnered with NI Screen, which is an agency based here in Northern Ireland and who are partners with PRONI in the UTV digitization project. So we partnered with them, and they were able to help us find clips that we were interested in looking at. And before the lockdown, what we were planning to do was to bring in young people into PRONI to engage with that collection, but particularly to look at gender, about how gender is generally represented in this old audiovisual collections, and we're going to get the kids to create things from their engagement with the collections. So the YouTube filmmaking was actually a hook to get them signed up, because if we had advertised the program as an archive filmmaking program or come to PRONI and we're going to discuss kind of like sexism and gender issues in old audiovisual archives, we probably wouldn't have got a single sign up. So we thought about like, let's add a YouTube filmmaking element, and then we're going to be having loads of kids signing up because they all want to be YouTubers, TikTokers nowadays. So it was just a hook, was just a strategy to get them through the door, which worked because we had a waiting list and we weren't able to accommodate everyone. So the way that the program worked was, as Lynsey said as well, we used to do different types of programs, and these hot houses, they generally happen across 5 days during a full week. So we spend, in the case, because we're working with them online, we spend 3 hours each day with them and on Zoom, and also using Slack, which Lynsey also mentioned, which is a great chat room platform. It's safe because you have to be invited to take part in the chat room. And it's great because you can share images, videos, and text with each other, and allows us a lot of put a lot of safeguarding in place. So the kids were aged 11 to 16. Some had experience in filmmaking, some didn't. We're doing it for the first time. And each day we focus on a particular sort of like skill, on a particular theme. So one day we were looking at smartphone filmmaking. Another day it was about all the archives, showing the material that they're going to engage with. Also talking about copyright, about reusing archival footage in their film productions. Another day we were talking about, we had a YouTuber from Ireland called John D. Roddy, who gave them kind of like a masterclass on YouTube and how to grow your channel and all of that. And it was great for the kids to engage with him. And at the end of each day, we also gave them a task to create a short video inspired by what they saw from our archives. So what I'll do now is I'm going to show you a short clip just to give a flavor of the program. I think it explains better than I would. So give me 1 second. I'm going to try to play it now.
Gentlemen, are you worried about hairdressing? Well, you ought to be, because it seems that soon one of the last male preserves may go for a Burton in the opposite sex.
I think she's done a good job.
Great.
For a lady.
I think a lot of young people nowadays feel no association at all with political parties and the issues that they address.
It's difficult being a woman, but it's even more difficult when you're a woman and you live west of the ban.
There's still like elements of it today, obviously. It's not as bad as it used to be in like the 50s and 60s and all.
Looking at clips like that from way back shows how far we've kind of come from that.
Mm-hmm. Also shows how far we have to go as well.
I think that women have taken more action to change the way we live. For women have to work harder.
It could change a lot more, but it hasn't changed as much as it should.
I'm still blown away by the fact that this stuff would be shown on TV. It just doesn't feel right in comparison to what you see today.
I just thought it was really weird.
Not boring. None of them could be called boring.
Anything you'd like to change about yourself, anything you don't like about your body?
My belly and my love handles, definitely. And my arms, I don't really like them either.
Is there anything you do like?
Not that much. I'm not too fussy, but I don't know.
In Blackstuff Square, someone was putting up a sign that said WOMA. Oh, the Working Women's the Working Women's Square. Then someone signed the thing. Someone spat into a loudspeaker. This woman started talking about how Tato in the North and Tato in the South are two different companies, and how we should not fall for Tato in the North, because Tato in the South are much better. Their crisps supposedly taste a lot better. I do not quite believe that, because onion rings in the South are disgusting in comparison to onion rings in the North. But they're dancing and men are watching in the corner, so they must be doing something right.
My favourite part of the week, I think it would have to be watching all the old clips, and then also the discussion that we had afterwards.
This project has definitely opened my eyes to a lot of different ways of making different sorts of content.
And I'd say there was a lot of good discussion that went on there as well.
Learning the tips to becoming like a better YouTuber. And it's really fun, especially like meeting new people and seeing people's different views of the topics we discussed.
Okay, so just to complement it before I move to the next program, this really blew us away because we weren't expecting them to be so interested in the whole gender side of things. We thought it just came just for the YouTube filmmaking part of it, but they really, as you could see with part of the discussion, they were so interested, and the discussion went on for a good while, and they really listened and they really watched the material that we had selected for them. And it was great because it also showed them a little bit about kind of like the boundaries, the ethical boundaries of reusing archival footage as well. Although they were making fun of the sexist content they had engaged with, they were also very much aware of when and how to reuse archival footage, which again for us was a big surprise because our expectations were a little bit lower because of the whole YouTube element and the fun side of it. But it was brilliant, and as you saw, they got very engaged with the whole thing. The next program I want to show you is, the next one is called Textile Stories, which we targeted adults for that one rather than kids, and we started a few weeks afterwards after we recovered from the YouTube filmmaking program. It took place over 4 weeks. We had two evening sessions per week, and we had 19 participants, all women, not by choice. For some reason, just women sign up for our things because it's women in the archives, and that scares men off. We don't know why. So that project was about offering the participants a series of talks about the different collections that we have in PRONI in relation to fashion history and mills history and all that kind of thing, but also different talks about conflict textiles, about the role of archival research in theater costume, fashion history, etc. And to make it a little bit fun as well, we added a photo embroidery element to the program. So participants received a kit in the post. You can see the picture there, I hope you can see it well, with basic embroidery material, but also with 2 postcards from PRONI featuring images from our collections. And what we asked the participants to do after the workshop was, you have 2 blank canvas there, create anything you want with those 2 postcards, embroider, you can add a story to it, you can create a whole new story, you can, just beautify, the postcards. They could do anything. And it was great to see what the participants came up with. Again, they were very creative, and each came up with a different thing for their postcards, and we put them together on a virtual exhibition. If you go to textile-stories.org, you can see the postcards that were created by the participants, but I'm going to show you 2 here. So what was really interesting was when they didn't have much information. Some of them, they did a bit of research on the postcards to try to find out who was depicted in the postcard and try to get a little bit more of the backstory. But sometimes you just can't find a lot of information. So for example, with this Cooper collection of studio portraits, it's very hard to know who these people were. So some of the participants, they actually added a whole new story based on, for example, something that was happening in Northern Ireland. So last year we had the first legal same-sex marriage taking place, and so Stanislava, she did for her postcard a whole backstory around, almost kind of like reimagining these 2 ladies in the photograph as the 2 ladies who got married, for the first time, a same-sex marriage, first time in Northern Ireland. Victoria did something very similar as well for hers. She got a postcard from circus performers from the early 1900s, and it was around the same time of the suffrage movement. So again, through the photo embroidery, she added that Votes for Women element to her postcard. And some women as well, they said that they became so attached to the postcards, and they were asking us for more postcards because they want to keep doing it. And a lot of them also said how therapeutic photo embroidery was as well, and it was nice to take time off screen and to focus on something that was a little bit more manual. So that was Textile Stories. I'm going to move to the next and the third project we want to show you now before we share some observations about the strengths and limitations of going virtual. So when we finished Textile Stories, that was end of September. We started to move towards our next strand. Remember, Lynsey said that Making the Future has 9 different strands, and PRONI is responsible for 3. So, and as she said as well, for the first 2 years, we focused 100% on the Women in the Archive strand and doing the oral history archive alongside. But it was time to start, thinking about the next round, 100 short stories. This is the last year of the project, so we had to move. Another thing that we were finding as well, just before we started this strand, was that the open calls were starting to not work as well as before. We don't know if it was like there was a lack of an appetite for virtual programs, or also because, open calls, you're talking to the same audience over and over and over again. So we're starting to see the same people who signed up for the Ordinary, Extraordinary project back, early on, coming back to other programs as well. So we decided to do for the 100 short stories strand was to go back to a more targeted way of recruiting people. So talking to groups and trying to get people through that type of recruitment rather than just a social media open call. So for 100 short stories, we're going to be creating a website with a digital archive with 100 digital stories inspired by 100 documents from PRONI's collections. And through our community engagement program, we're going to be selecting those 100 documents with the participants. And to make our lives easier, we split the 100 documents into 10 different themes. And for each theme, we're going to be running an engagement program with, as I said, with targeted groups. So this year we have already delivered 2 projects. The first one was for an LGBT plus group. But I'm going to focus on the second project, which was around the theme of education, which we delivered for a group of people with varying degrees of sight loss. We were approached by their leader called Olive Rogers. She came to us saying that she wanted to work with Making the Future. She wanted us to do something for her group. She didn't know what. And together we came up with the idea of running a filmmaking program for her group. And she said it was something that they'd never done it before. And I said, we've never done it before either for a group of sight loss. So it's going to be a nice challenge. But for us, the real issue wasn't the lack of sight. For us, the real issue was how can you run a filmmaking program virtually? Because we had an experience with the group, with the YouTube group earlier, and we knew kind of like how challenging it is to get people to make films when they don't have access to your own equipment. They have to use the equipment they have at home. So this was a little bit what we were concerned with, not necessarily with the sight loss element, but we love a challenge. So we said, why not? Let's learn it together and see how it goes and hope for the best together. So we started that program at the end of January. It was an 8-week program, 8-session program. So 2 sessions per week, and in the mornings, and we got the participants to engage with our collections. We wanted them to, as I said earlier, to help us select documents that will go into the education section of the 100 short stories website, and we got them to we got the material audio described, and we got them to help us select sort of like the top 10 of all the documents we showed them. And but very importantly as well, we wanted them to document and to share their experience of education, and education in a very broad sense. So the task was each of them were to produce a short film about their education experience. So we had 3 filmmaking workshops with Holly Scott Gardner, who is actually a visually impaired YouTuber. And it was brilliant to have her on board because she really gave them a lot of confidence to produce their own films. And we also had one-to-one sessions, myself and Lynsey, with the group to help them finalize their filming plans. And it was great to see that, some of them, they really took on the challenge of trying to film things themselves and trying to edit themselves, whereas others prefer to focus more on scripting. And then we did a lot of the filming through Zoom. And then Lynsey and I, we did the editing from our end. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play a short clip of part of one of the films that were made, and this one was by Mark McShane, where he talks about getting a law degree from the OU.
My name's Mark McShane, and I am severely sight impaired blind. I'm 40 years old, and when I was 38 years old, I achieved a childhood degree at one of the graduate universities. The degree ceremony was in the waterfront in Belfast. It was the 5th of October 2018. I went there, and And I got registered and got tickets for my sisters and I, and both my sisters were there. I went and got my graduation gown. I'd hired a graduation gown for the event. And when I put it on, I felt the weight of it on my shoulders, and I leaned down and touched the bottom of it just above my ankle. And I thought, wow, look what you've done. Look where you are. You did it. You're here. I got my picture taken for the newspaper in the Irish News. I was showing up onto the stage. Got the chance to walk across it before the ceremony. I was a bit nervous about walking across the stage. I'm a bit nervous about walking places where I don't know. So the ceremony started and my name was called. Eventually my name was called and I crossed the stage. Oh, I felt so happy. If you watch the video, you can see me waving to my sisters. And I met the Vice Chancellor and I got the scroll. I got my formal portrait. I've been wanting a picture of me in a graduation gown and mortarboard for a long time, and I finally got it. Yeah. It's one of the best days. Graduation, the degree ceremony day.
What did you do with the portrait? Is it hanging up on your wall?
We haven't got that far yet.
You haven't got this far yet.
Haven't even got a friend yet. Sorry.
Right, so that was Mark's story. What we loved about this project was we told them that they should be creating a 5-minute film, and they all ignored our briefing, and they all created their films are like 15 to 20 minutes. But that just shows that they had a lot to say, and that the project really gave them a bit confidence to share their stories, that they totally ignored our briefing and went and did whatever they wanted. So the films, we just wrapped up the project, and we're going to be launching it as a website at the end of April, and you're all invited to join us. So stay tuned. So just to wrap up, and then we can go to the Q&A. We just want to tell you a little bit about the strengths and the limitations, and again, our observations of what it was like for us to move our work online. So it's been, let's start with the positives first, and then we go to negatives. So it's been great in terms of the reach and opening doors. As the map, the 2 maps showed earlier, it was great. We have been able to go to places that would require a lot of time and effort from us to physically go to those places and run projects in different communities. We try to do that as much as possible. But as you saw with the 2 maps, with the virtual, it's much quicker, it's much easier and much cheaper to get to those type of places, particularly rural Ireland. It's much harder to get to those places. So it definitely has opened the doors for people to come to PRONI, from the comfort of their own homes. Virtual programs are very convenient for people. People can do it while multitasking. If they don't have anyone to mind the kids, they can still go on a Zoom call and have the kids, right beside them. So it's very convenient. It is accessible, particularly to those with mobility issues, or again, who wouldn't be able to travel all the way to Belfast or the way to their nearest community centres to take part in a program. So again, it helps with that side of things. And well-being, we were living through a pandemic, and I think with all of our projects, what all the participants would have said, it was like, thank God for the project. It gave me something positive. It gave me something creative to do during the lockdown. And even at the early project, we were talking about the pandemic, but it's still, we're doing it in a very creative way. And that sense, we're creating history together. It was very beneficial to people's well-being too. But, here comes a big but. The dynamics, this is something that it's really lost when you run Zoom workshops. Lynsey and I, we love being in the room with people, and we always say that as good as it is that we're reaching out and we're, engaging with people that we would have never engaged otherwise, or they wouldn't got them to engage with each other otherwise, but it's not the same as working with people face to face. You lose out on so much, the sensitivities, and it's not the same thing. In terms of accessibility as well, not everyone has access to the same, equipment. Internet connections are not as reliable, depending on where you are. And particularly with the extraordinary projects, we really wanted to reach out to those who are being excluded from a lot of virtual programs because they don't have the techie skills. So for us, it was very important to try to make our programs as accessible as possible, even to those who are not very, very techie savvy. And using Zoom, which over time people became more familiar with, was a good way. And also Slack, which really surprised us because most of the participants had never heard of Slack, even the young ones. And even the eldest participants who wouldn't be very techie savvy, they all learned how to use Slack, and the majority of them actually were able to use it and to benefit from it. But we're very, very conscious that going virtual also has limitations and makes it less accessible to kind of like a chunk of the population. Virtual burnout, that's a big one, and it's something that we're experiencing now when we're trying to recruit people. People are tired of being on Zoom and Zoom workshops, so it's been very hard to convince people to go on Zoom in the evenings or when they don't really have to go. And again, I think it's making us really think about our recruitment strategy a little bit harder than at the beginning of the lockdown. The last point I want to say is in terms of the technical quality of projects, particularly in relation to the filmmaking projects, there is only so much that you can do when you're working virtually with people, especially if they are known filmmakers who are making a film for the first time. We know that we could have made all the films look 10 times better if we were working in the room with them. But for us, that's not a big problem, because for us, it has always been very much more about the process, giving people the confidence to share the stories, to be heard, and then kind of like hope for the best that the films are going to, look good, and we try our best to make them look as good as possible. So we know that you lose out a little bit on the technical quality and on how far you can go with people in terms of training them. But just to sum up everything, strengths and limitations to going virtual, we're still learning about them. And for us, it's been a fantastic experience. And I think going forward, we talk a lot about we don't want to be on Zoom ever again. But I think there is an argument for maybe doing a hybrid program with in-person elements and online elements, because there are some positives as well. But we're dying to get back in the room with people, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we can do that very, very soon. So that's it from us. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much to both Laura and Lynsey for an awesome presentation. We've had some really brilliant comments coming in, and we have people joining us from all over the UK, which is really cool. People from Cardiff to North Yorkshire, Lincoln, Birmingham, Ipswich and Kent. We have some really positive comments. We have 12 minutes left, so I'm just going to go straight into the questions. Okay, so someone has asked, did you find that people engaging with the crafting elements were experienced, or did they require support, not having ventured into that kind of creative work before? How much time was spent supporting the creative aspect?
Well, I think when we designed the programs, we came at them from the perspective of people who weren't skilled at all and tried to build that in. So anything that we were doing that was creative or skilled, that we would bring facilitators in to teach those skills, because they're not skills that Laura and I have naturally either. So we planned everything on the basis that people didn't have these skills, but we did find a lot that people would come with maybe a bit of experience or a bit of an interest. But we built facilitation into those sessions always, so that there was always someone there to teach the skills, because we went on the basis that people wouldn't know how to do the stuff.
Yeah, with the photo embroidery, we only had one creative session, which again surprised us a lot, because people who had never embroidered, like myself and Lynsey, we'd never done it before. You could actually learn it in a session. Doesn't mean you're going to do well, but you could learn it. But they did well. But I didn't, but they did. I think you're on mute there, Hafsal.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, I'll just read out the second question. I'm really interested in the funding structure, as it's really clear from the amazing work you're doing, the outreach, engagement, participatory practice and co-production at the heart of it, and you're doing it really well. But some of these things can be costly, like physical resources packs. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, well, you'll be surprised that most of the funding go towards either the facilitation, if we bring external expertise, but for example, the filmmaking side of it, sometimes we do everything ourselves. And so in terms of cost, it's mostly staff costs. And we do the editing, we do everything from our end. So you'll be surprised by how much how low cost you can go with a lot of things. And with our projects, we generally have sort of like, we have a very healthy budget, but we try not to spend everything in one project and try to spread it across and do a bit of magic as much as we can. So Textile Stories, a very cheap project to run, because all we had to pay was just, we had the series of talks and then the one creative workshop. But we've run programs before that it cost us like catering for the day. And then everything else was done by myself and Lynsey. So, and we also work with the Nerve Center, who is a creative media center, and they have a lot of internal expertise there. So we would bring our colleagues there to run the workshops with us. And that's a way of keeping kind of like extra costs down. And in terms of building the websites, we build them ourselves as well. We used a platform called Wix, which I don't know if people would be familiar with. It's brilliant. It's very user-friendly. You can use the free version. We paid for that version, which gives us kind of like we can use our own domain name, but it costs less than £200 and for the year, and very easy, very user-friendly. So we try to keep everything we do extremely low cost, because the numbers for Making the Future are very, very ambitious in terms of the participants numbers that we have to reach. So we have to do a bit of magic, although, as I said, we have a very healthy budget, but we have to spread it across to reach the targets. Yeah, so you'd be surprised how much you can get going low cost with things.
Okay, and someone has asked, Lynsey, you mentioned healthy funding from the EU. Are you looking or thinking about sustainability given Brexit and with a post-COVID world? It sounds like you're faced with big challenges. How are you approaching it?
Yeah, well, as Laura was saying there, we did have a healthy amount of money given to us to do this project. And initially, obviously, the project was based on a lot of travel, and that's what we spent most money on before COVID, was bussing people about, or Laura and I moving around. That was where most of our money was going. We're not worried about the funding through the Peace Programme with Brexit. They're about to announce a new round of funding under the Peace Programme called Peace Plus. And they've committed to carry on doing that in Northern Ireland despite the Brexit process, which is great news for us and for all of the work that's done under that. We're just one very, very, very small thing in 20 years worth of peace funding and programmes that have gone on in Northern Ireland. And with COVID, it's really hard to know what the future is going to look like, even though we've only got to the end of 2021 on this particular project. We hope that more will come after that we will find funding through Peace Plus or something else to carry on this sort of work through PRONI and with the Nerve Centre and the likes of national museums as well, because those partnerships have been really beneficial for us and really strong. And it's, we don't know with COVID what way it's going to go. We've learnt, how, as Laura said, a hybrid approach we think probably in the future is going to be the best, because as I said, we spent a lot of money traveling a lot, and we could cut some of that out, but not all of it out, because we do want to bring these people into the building of PRONI if they've never been in, and they're maybe from a way out west and they would never come all that way themselves. We want to bring them in. We want to take the archives out to them as well. So there's lots of things this year, that could have thrown us off track between Brexit and COVID, and we've managed to scrape our way through. And I think a big part of that, to be honest, is strong partnerships being led by the Nerve Centre, working alongside places like national museums. We're all stronger the more that we work together. We're all doing the same, slightly different things for the same end. And the more that we can work together, pull resourcing, then the better. As Laura said, the Nerve Centre have loads of skills and equipment that they share with us all the time that saves us money. Equally, national museums have different types of collections. They have physical, items and objects, whereas we have archival materials. So, the more that we can share with one another, the better, and that doesn't cost us anything. So there's lots of, strong partnerships, good funding. We're not too worried about it yet. So hopefully things will keep going in the right direction.
Awesome. Someone has asked, I think quite a pertinent question. Can you tell us more about how you are changing your recruitment approach to tackle virtual burnout?
Yeah, the targeted approach. So, for example, for the first program we did for 100 Shared Stories, we worked with different LGBTQ plus organizations. So, just got in touch with them, people that we knew, the new people, and we got a lot of things through word of mouth. But some of these organizations, they already had sort of like 5 people that that would be interested in joining, coming together for a program. So, and same with RNIB as well, that we worked with them, and they were the ones who brought the 10 participants to work with us on that filmmaking program. We have now 2 programs coming up, one starting next week and another one after Easter. And we're going kind of like, we're trying to go the same route as well in terms of targeting these umbrella organizations, and then within them trying to identify people who would be interested. So the one we're starting next week is for migrant and at minority communities here in Northern Ireland. So we're going to those umbrella organizations and getting them to spread the word across their channels and recruiting people that way, rather than just a social media open call for anyone, anywhere to sign up. So yeah, ask us again in 2 months' time how that's going, because it's something that it's not only us in PRONI, but our colleagues in the Lena Hall Library, the Nerve Centre and the museums, they're experiencing the same thing with when trying to recruit open calls, just putting something up on social media. Before we would get, as Lynsey said, with ordinary, extraordinary, we had to run it 3 times because once wasn't enough, because there was such a huge demand for that program. And now if we get 20 signed up, and of course with free programs, you get 20 signed up and only, let's say 15 turn up on the day. And then by the end of the project, only 10 sort of like complete the project. So you lose a lot of numbers along the way. So you want to always oversubscribe, and through open calls, you are struggling to even get the 20. And when you go a targeted approach, if an organization said within our organization, we have 10 people who are interested in the project, they're more likely to stay from start to finish because they are already signing up, kind of like, it's almost like a captive audience in a way. So yeah, so we're hoping for the best for the next 2 programs. And the other one is one where it's a virtual reality program across the border. So we're working with the Rural Community Network and getting them, again, as the umbrella organization, to help us identify groups and identify individuals and send them over to us. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. We have just 2 minutes left, so I'd just quickly like to read out some positive feedback that we've gotten. Someone has said, the YouTube hook is a good idea. It's like offering punch and cookies if you are holding a meeting that is hard to sell. I think it's great that you got a YouTuber involved to give expert real advice. This is a great video for youth engagement. It's a brilliant presentation, a lot to think about. Can you tell us your enthusiasm and commitment are very inspiring. Thank you. Thank you for the talk. Some brilliant online projects, especially like the photo embroidery project. And I think we'll wrap it up there. We only have around 2 minutes left. And thank you very much to Lynsey and Laura for your expertise and giving your time to us. And we have many other events that are coming up for the next 8 weeks or so. So please do stick around. And thank you very much to everyone for joining us. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.